More professional athletes send a message and make a statement in light of recent events. Ferguson, Mike Brown, Staten Island, Eric Gardner, and of course, Florida, Trayvon Martin. And in the same vein of Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown, who were a part of the movement in the 60s, today's athletes continue to show their solidarity with those demonstrating across the country by wearing T-shirts that read, "I can't breathe," like Derrick Rose, LeBron James, Cavs teammates, as well as some Nets players.
It was a message to the family, that I'm sorry for their loss. Sorry, to his wife, and that's what it's about. I think everybody else get caught up in everything else besides who's really feeling it, and that's the family, and that's what it's about. How larger can it be to pay respects to the family? It doesn't get any larger than that. Obviously, we know our society needs to do better, but like I said before. Violence is not the answer, and retaliation isn't the solution. As a society, we know we have to get better, but it's not going to be done in one day. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we know that, but we all have to do better.
Society needs to do better. We all need to do better. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said, "I respect Derrick Rose and all of our players for voicing their personal views on important issues, but my preference would be for players to abide by on-court attire rules." All right, well, lots to address here. Stephen, I'll start with you first. First, let's talk about the movement. And by movement, I mean the more and more we're seeing athletes who are speaking out, demonstrating, showing their solidarity, and then address the commissioner's statements.
First things first, I applaud all the athletes who are showing that they're conscientious enough to be aware of things that are going on in our society, and more importantly, are displaying the courage to speak out. Obviously, they can be incredibly influential, particularly to our younger generation. And the fact that they know this and recognize this and use this for a cause that's bigger than themselves, that's not personal, that's not something that they directly benefit from, is a huge, huge thing, because they come from these very, very communities, by and large, that they are speaking about, where problems actually exist. And if that's their way of showing that we are one and we're with you and we understand and we're sensitive to what you're going through, even though if we've evolved beyond a point where by and large we're not going through that ourselves, at least with the level of frequency we may have once gone through it, or people in desolate circumstances are going through as we speak, more power to them. They're absolutely right to speak on that issue, and I applaud them for doing so. But at the same time, I also think that it's important twofold. Number one, that they do everything they can to get as informed as they possibly can about particular incidences in question. And number two, when they speak out about it, at least of what you know, be completely honest. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and those guys, I totally applaud what they did last night. Kevin Garnett, Darren Williams, and those boys, totally applaud them.
Jarrett Jack,
especially Jarrett Jack as well. But LeBron was honest, but not complete in what he was explaining. That was not just about paying respect to the family. That was about bringing attention to the issues of what a lot of people, particularly within the African-American community, perceive as being excessive police force, or whatever the case may be. You can't sit there and talk about it's just for the family and just to pay respects to the family when there were people outside of the Barclays Center laying in the streets protesting, knowing that the Duke and the Duchess were coming in attendance, that Jay-Z and Beyonce were in attendance.
What a night that was.
I mean, come on now.
Building, man.
You certainly weren't doing it just to pay respects to the family. We know why you were doing it, and they weren't wrong to do it. America is going to have to stand up and recognize something that's incredibly, incredibly important, Skip, Kerry. I am not about to sit here and denigrate our law enforcement officials in America. By and large, most of them do an absolutely wonderful job. They put their lives on the line. When we get in trouble, the first thing we do is dial 911. Can't go from that to denigrating law enforcement officials. It's counterproductive. There's no excuse for it. And to be quite honest with you, it would be flat out wrong. But I also stand by Jon Stewart on Comedy Central, who accurately pointed out that just because you're highlighting some of the problems that may exist doesn't mean you're engaging in condemnation for an entire entity. And that's what I think people try. They try to make you pick one complete side against the other when there's problems in both places. I work for ESPN. My name is Stephen A. Smith. I'm living quite well. I drive nice cars. I live a relatively affluent life. I did not want to bring this up. Colleagues here of African-American descent encouraged me to bring it up. My family encouraged me to bring it up. I'm going to do it now. There is not a month that goes by that I don't get stopped by police officers. It happens to me all the time. It happened to me just a couple of months ago, right on Columbus Avenue, going towards the spot, one of my favorite soul food spots called Spoon Breads in Harlem, okay? And I get pulled over by the cop. I do what I always do. I roll down all 4 windows. I put my hands on the steering wheel. And I said, "Officer, what did I do? Why'd you pull me over?" And the man literally screamed at me. The officer literally screamed at me, I didn't come here to hear your mouth. Shut up. And literally took his hands and put it on his pistol. And then another officer came around and whispered, "That's Stephen A." ESPN. Officer looked at me and said, "Have a nice day," and walked away. Most folks don't have that luxury in the black community. Most folks don't get to sit here according to what they're saying and just have a cop walk away. Now, I say that with hesitancy because I will repeat, 95% of the time, officers give me no problems whatsoever. So I don't want to come across as somebody that's lambasting them. But it does need to be said that there is a problem from time to time in terms of the perception of and how stereotypes and how their personal experiences from being the law enforcement officials and legitimately putting their lives on the line for the betterment of a community that they've sworn to serve, that they are, a few, are highly sensitive. And on far too many occasions, what black America is saying with this whole incident, whether it's Michael Brown, whether it's Eric Garner in Harlem, I Can't Breathe, with the video, a cell phone video where we see him, we see 4 officers on him, we see his arm extended, we see him saying "I can't breathe," and we see the show code still on him. What you have people in the African-American community saying is, "Excuse me, this is happening to us. Hear us. Listen to us. We are not making this up. And by the way, it's happening to us. It appears more than it's happening to anybody else. Can y'all please do something about this?" And as long as the protests are peaceful, I have no problem with it, because it seems to me that they are speaking for a disenfranchised community in America that is repeating yet again, we are not being heard. And I take that very seriously. The players apparently do, and I applaud them for doing so.
Because you told your story, and I appreciate your story. I'm curious, can you identify the race of the 2 officers?
Oh, yeah, they were white.
Both white?
No, I said 4.
Oh, 4.
4 officers. One came up to me and acted that way. The other officer, who happened to be white, identified who I was, and they left me alone.
Okay.
But all 4 officers, 2 on the driver's side, 2 on the passenger side, all 4 were white.
4 officers stopped you?
Yeah, how it usually works, Skip, is that one officer pulls you over, but then there's always another cop car that comes.
Yes.
But in fairness to them, when I got stopped in Detroit years ago, when I told the story of Troy, Michigan, coming from the Palace in Auburn Hills, when I got stopped and I ultimately was incarcerated for 4 hours, and we found out it was because I was driving with a suspended license because I paid the ticket, but it got there late, and I owed a $15 late fee. It was 2 of those officers were black. But 8 cops surrounded my car.
But listen to what you just said. Listen to what you just said, how it usually works.
Yeah, usually.
Okay, is there a moral to that story? I mean, should you have flat out kept your mouth shut and not said, "What did I do wrong"?
Maybe.
Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. I guess for me, what I try to take from it, and I will stand here and tell you that I'm in the minority when it comes from a lot of people from my community on this particular issue, because so many of us as black people, we're so tired of having to go through this that our first instinct is to be emotional and to express anger.
I get it.
Me, I'm like this. I'm trying to live another day. I can fight this later on. Right now, I don't need to exacerbate the situation. Obey the law, listen to the officer, do what you're told so you can get through the incident, because in the heat of the moment, with emotions swirling, I'm sorry, but I need to say this, as uncomfortable as it may sound to people, but I need to say this. My mentality is this: he has a gun, I don't. Let me leave that alone. Obey the law. I want to get out of this situation right now. Obey the law, pose no resistance. Make sure you listen to what the officer tells you to do. That's how I think, but that's how I was raised to think by my mama. Listen to the law enforcement.
Do you have any idea why you were stopped in the first place?
Oh, my windows were tinted. That's what I think it was. I wasn't speeding because it was down Columbus Avenue. If it were a highway, 50-50 shot, I might have been speeding.
Did they say why they stopped you?
No. Because the minute the officer identified me, that was that.
And what if the officer had not been able to identify you?
I don't know. I probably would have had to show my license, registration, and whatever he would have said I was doing, I would have had to comply with that. But the point is, I didn't expect that anything violent was going to happen to me, because I didn't put myself in a position to give an officer that excuse. I rolled down all 4 windows, I put my hands on the steering wheel, and I obey the law. And that's what I want to encourage folks to do. You live to fight another day. And that's not to sit there and say that the officer's automatically going to be inclined to do something to you. I don't mean it to be interpreted that way. I'm saying you never, ever know. Because the one thing I am sensitive to when it comes to law enforcement officials is that they put their lives on the line for us every day. So the point of the matter is that I can't... listen, if we have our, like Mark Cuban said, if we have our own prejudices and we have our own beliefs because of what's paraded in our face from a media perspective and beyond, well, my God, what do police officers have to deal with by being subjected to that stuff every day? I mean, they're out there fighting crime. Could you imagine if we see what we see, what they see firsthand, and how it could mess with their psyche? Yes, I'm sensitive to that. Yeah. So as a result, I'm even more so, it's about obeying the law and doing what I'm told to do, so I can come back another day. If they're wrong, I'll fight it in court. That's me.
Again, I can't personally appreciate, but I appreciate the fact that you told your story.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it that you prefaced it with the fact that we all do have to pick up that phone and call 911 if we're in trouble, and you have to trust in those people who have an almost impossible job to do. They are necessary. Occasionally they go over the line into necessary evil, obviously. And that is what you're having to live with, and many black people are having to live with now.
But that's what a lot of that's what a lot of black folks feel. No officer has ever, like, grabbed me, put their hands on me, threw me. Another. I said this officer yelled at me. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. That's not the same as pulling out your gun and putting it in my face or whatever.
But you felt threatened. You felt like he had his hand on his gun.
I felt like that, absolutely. And I saw him like that. But again, I'm wise enough to sit there and say, all right, Steve, keep your mouth shut, obey the law, let's get through this moment, as opposed to getting in a law enforcement official's face. He is a law enforcement official.
All right. Stephen A. with the message, take special care. All right. We appreciate that. Thank you. We have to go. We'll obviously address this topic in the future on the show.
Adam Silver, okay. All right.